What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to episode number 709 of the Smark Moment Smack Talk podcast, hot tags of the week. I don't know why I'm talking a little bit weird with my intro for this edition, but it's happening, whatever it is. I'm Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
The sad day.
The sad day?
4th of July.
Oh, yeah,
we lost you guys.
Yeah, I'm not celebrating that at all. I would celebrate 8647 if we're celebrating numbers.
I only celebrate one number. You only celebrate one number.
69,
baby.
Yeah. I was like, wait a minute. Hey. Some much better numbers out there than 7/4. And we're not going to be talking about any of that big, beautiful fucking nonsense. I already said the F word in a minute, so there goes my monetization, whatever. Instead, we're going to talk about title changes. We're going to talk about a different American hero in Guile, an actual American hero instead of a treasonous traitor, and some stuff about people potentially leaving AEW, some people returning to AEW after a little while, and a weird thing that's happening with Slammiversary. That's what my lineup is, at least for this edition. So we invite you, as always, to drop your comments below. Tell us what you think about all the things we're talking about here and anything else that you want to chime in about. You can also hit up the Discord server. If you are not looking on YouTube right now to see that link, go to the sidebar of smarkmoment.com and you will see the link to the Discord over there. It's very easy. You just click on that, join the server, and chat it up. Keep in mind, though, if you are on YouTube, ring that notification bell, get those email alerts set up for the live things that are going to be happening next week, because next week is going to be an onslaught of pay-per-view points. We've got the NXT Great American Bash. We've got AEW All In, Saturday night's main event, Evolution. And we're not going to be doing a post show for each one of those separately. It's going to be combined for at least Saturday night and then Sunday separately, but no post show for Ring of Honor. Not going to dedicate a whole thing to that. But we'll break that down on the hot tags and stuff too. So get those email alerts set up. Also make sure that you are subscribed to this YouTube channel. Hit the like button, hit the share button. And if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things, click on the join button that you can see on there, or the thanks button, both greatly appreciated in whatever donations that you give. If you're over on Patreon, patreon.com/smarkoutmoment, same exact tiers that are over there on YouTube. If you want to be on the Darkcast tier, the Pick a Poison tier, even at $1 a month, it's all greatly, greatly appreciated. It all helps keep the lights on, as well as picking up some merchandise on Redbubble and TeePublic. At least until I move them to somewhere else. But I haven't figured that out yet. Too many other things. So we are all, a lot of different topics to get into here. I think maybe we should start off with the one that I would have the least of, like, the knowledge of, which would be Zack Sabre Jr. won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. And that seems a little odd to me. But then again, I'm not watching New Japan. But from an outsider's perspective, it kind of feels like they're just sort of throwing everything randomly out there this year, and there doesn't seem to be much cohesion. Maybe I'm wrong, but what do you get the sense that this was done for?
Well, the general consensus is this company's fucked. It's all. I'll say that now. It's over a minute. Monetization gone or not, but otherwise, it's this company is in absolute dire straits creatively now. I don't know what's happened to Goto. He's completely lost the plot, it seems. I guess it feels like this is so anti what, say, someone. I don't consider myself like a big historian of New Japan Pro Wrestling or a diehard fan of the promotion, but like there was a good period of time where it was, in my opinion, the best wrestling you could find in the world. And that was based on a lot of clear long-term booking and star making for the guys of like Kazuchika Okada, Jay White, Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, Tetsuya Naito. It felt like there was a lot more strategic thinking behind it. Whereas this just feels like a move saying, oh yeah, we're going to go to the UK soon for Forbidden Door, so might as well make Zack Sabre Jr. the champion for it.
Like when they gave the belt to Jinder Mahal in WWE?
Yeah, it does feel like, because there's no rational reason why they've made Zack Sabre Jr. the champion, because even though I was happy for the move because I'm a big fan of Zack Sabre Jr. I think he's an excellent wrestler. He's done so much for New Japan. He's been very loyal to the company. So And, he's one of the top wrestlers in the world, especially in the type of wrestling that he does. So I think that he was worthy of at least giving a title run to and see how that happens. But it has to be said that from a business perspective, his title run was pretty, I guess, uneventful would be the kindest way to put it. Outright disaster would probably be the more accurate and harsher way of saying it. Because even in, like, when they did shows in the UK, they didn't even really sell out the buildings. And that probably isn't a reflection on Zack as a champion himself. It's more of a reflection on just how poorly the company is being perceived at the moment. But I guess they feel putting Zack in the New Japan title match at Forbidden Door against whoever it ends up being, whether it's another guy from New Japan, whether it's a guy from AEW, CMLL, whatever, it means that it will at least appeal more to the audience that is there at that show. I mean, that is their last, outside of the G1, which obviously is going to be happening in between that time, it's their last big show before Wrestle Kingdom. Because all the other ones are kind of your kind of like middling shows that fill the void between Dominion and Wrestle Kingdom. So yeah, it just seems odd that he's seemingly, unless they decide to change the championship at Forbidden Door, that he's going to be the guy that goes into Wrestle Kingdom as the champion, which he did last year, but that was, I mean, it was a flop, and it was probably the worst Wrestle Kingdom show there's been for a good number of years. And yeah, hopefully they don't decide to pair him up with. Hopefully his idea of long-term booking this time is to say, hey, let's just throw Shota Umino in the main event again, because that was just awful. But yeah, there was news that came out after the title change that Hirooki Goto had a shoulder injury, which meant that he was going to be missing a couple of shows. So maybe it was a spur of the moment thing, saying, well, if Hirooki Goto's not going to be at 100% for the G1, still going to be in it, but not going to probably be at his best, then maybe we change the championship beforehand, and so there's less pressure on him to perform. But yeah, outside of that, it doesn't make any real sense from either a business perspective or seemingly a long-term booking perspective. It just feels like, I mean, for me, it just feels like he's there for Forbidden Door, and it almost makes you feel like that they're planning on changing the championship and putting it on an AEW guy at Forbidden Door to try and make Wrestle Kingdom feel a bit more interesting.
Do you think that there's any like standout potential options that they could be building towards, to be like, give that to Will Ospreay or give that to I don't know. Well, I mean, there's a change to the to the card already when it comes to All In. Like, if Swerve and Ospreay lose the match to the Young Bucks, then they can't challenge for the AEW World Championship for a full year. Maybe one of them's holding the New Japan title instead or something.
Yeah, I mean, Ospreay would make sense in the sense that he has an inbuilt fan base and a reputation in New Japan. Swerve would be a real stretch because he doesn't have a reputation in Japan, so it doesn't feel like making him the champion of the whole promotion is a bit of a sideways move for them as a company. Ospreay would make more sense, but even then, it's like there's a very delicate balance now between New Japan and AEW from both fan bases' perspective. In the New Japan feels like they're very much the baby brother of this relationship and aren't being treated as fairly, or they feel that certain things are happening. I mean, the biggest indication of that recently is the Gabe Kidd situation, where Gabe Kidd was seen as like this new star for New Japan and was building his reputation on the authenticity in which he says that he's like pure New Japan, like that's in his heart, that's who he represents. And he fought Kenny Omega earlier this year on the basis of like he's New Japan's representative against this guy that's gone to AEW in the meantime. But then since then he has then popped up in AEW as part of the Death Riders, and now that layer of authenticity that his whole act hinged on is completely eroded. And so now the fans are not turning against him, but they just don't care as much as they used to. So, and that's just the whole attitude towards New Japan in general, really, is there's a lot of, it doesn't feel like the company or whoever's booking it really is thinking about has a clear direction of where things are going, or knows how to fix the current situation beyond just, you know, putting 3 more people into House of Torture every couple of months and hoping for the best. So it's just a real kind of miasma of like mediocrity at the moment, and this change to a champion that is, you know, from a wrestling standpoint excellent, but from a drawing standpoint pretty mediocre, is, yeah, it feels like another sideways move, if not like one backward step after another. But yeah, we'll just have to see how it all shapes out, whether it does mean that there'll be a title change at Forbidden Door, or whether that means that he'll only have the title for a short period of time. I guess it really all hinges on who wins the G1.
Is there any like progress on that front that seems to be pointing towards a certain person?
Well, not so much progress. There is progress in terms of now we know all the 20 participants because they had their qualifying matches to fill the final 2 spots. So we know that Callum Newman and Ryohei Oiwa are going to be in the A block, along with the guys that are already existing there, and Drilla Maloney and Yoshihashi are going in B block, which is doubly great because it means that both Bad Luck Fale and Chase Owens didn't make it into G1, which is obviously good from a quality perspective, even though I'm just put it out there, I'm not someone that watches the G1 like religiously. I pick out like a few matches every year to check out, especially, well, I used to a couple of years ago. I used to watch a lot more of it. Now it's a lot more sporadic. This one might be my most sporadic ever because I'm just not really interested in most of the guys that are in it outside of Takeshita and Takagi, and pretty much in B block you've got Zack, Shingo Takagi, Konosuke Takeshita, and Gabe Kidd, and they're probably the 4 people that I'm most interested in watching from a match quality standpoint. So pretty much I'd only watch B block matches and just let A block just happen. But no, there's nothing like deliberately pointing to there's like a clear standout favourite. My mind, since Takeshita lost the title, or lost his never openweight title at Dominion, and is seemingly not being, he's got the Ring of Honor World Championship match at the oh, what's it? It's not Death Before Dishonor, is it? Or is it Death Before Dishonor? Supercard of Honor, yeah, that's it. Keep flicking around the Ring of Honor pay-per-views, but yeah, Supercard of Honor. So he's got the match with Bandito. He's very unlikely to win that match, but he's just there because then he's going to have to go to the G1, and they probably don't want to be without a Ring of Honor World Champion, even if they don't do much with the title. I don't think they want to just have him disappear for a month immediately after winning it. So,
I'm kind of, I'm not tapped into it in a way that I could really, for either New Japan or Ring of Honor. I was kind of thinking maybe Takeshita does win, and they do their tapings pretty much, one shot is like multiple episodes, I think, or at least it's like they tape ahead of time. And I was like, maybe they just decide that they want to go with Takeshita, and they're like, well, he's the bigger name than Bandito, and then we'll figure it out, kind of a thing.
See, I don't believe that either. I think Bandito's the hot ticket right now. They are. He's
the most
Bandito
wanted,
right
at
now.
least.
Yeah. Well, they feel like they're super behind Bandito right now. He's getting a big push on AEW TV. I mean, the only reason why they might take the title off of Bandito is to feature him more on AEW rather than Takeshita. But yeah, I think that it's unlikely that Takeshita will probably just lose that in a great match, and then we'll head off to the G1. And then I think that he's definitely a big contender to win the G1. I think that it hasn't really changed my opinion. Like Gabe Kidd, I think will be out the running unless they are really dumb at the moment, so maybe they will decide to pick him. But it's a case of he doesn't have the momentum behind him that he previously had. Takagi is a solid hand, but it doesn't make sense realistically. It doesn't feel like a big match, Takagi versus Zack, if that's the route they go for at Wrestle Kingdom. But then again, none of the matches they could present sounds big. I'm strangely leaning more and more toward Tanahashi winning, which feels like, okay, this is just like papering over the cracks in the most like elaborate way you could possibly do, because they're just banking. It feels like they're just fully banking on the moment of Wrestle Kingdom just hinges on Tanahashi's retirement. That's the only draw for the entire event.
And basically, it doesn't matter who he beats as long as he beats that person for the title.
I think he'll lose. I think he'll lose.
I guess technically,
yeah. I think that's kind of like in the spirit of how to do it. But yeah, as I say, at the moment it's just very it's a very low atmosphere surrounding New Japan right now, and this title change doesn't do much to alleviate it. It's if anything, it helps stoke some people's anger towards AEW to New Japan for this change. So
well, that's an odd situation for a championship, but there's even another odd situation going on with the championship right now for another company, and cross promotional things and all. They announced apparently that at Slammiversary there is going to be a match between Masha Slamovich defending the TNA Knockouts Championship against whoever wins at Evolution between JC Jane and Jordynne Grace for the NXT Women's Championship. And it's title for title, meaning either Masha Slamovich is going to be the NXT Women's Champion by the end of Slammiversary, or what I think is much more likely, Jordynne Grace or JC Jane is going to hold both championships. And when I first heard about this, I'm not watching Impact, so I don't know if there's a specific storyline reason for this to happen, but my immediate reaction was, oh, they don't really like Masha as the champion anymore. And they're regretting that they don't have Jordynne Grace. And maybe they decided, can we try to get Jordynne Grace back, even if it's just in a shared capacity? And will WWE lend her to us if we're willing to have her be the champion and be a double champion? I can't imagine this being JC Jane. It's a possibility, but I can't really imagine her beating Jordynne Grace. And then I also, in particular, I really can't imagine JC beats Jordynne Grace to then lose to Masha Slamovich, and Masha is now on NXT as Women's Champion. There's a possibility that maybe JC retains over Jordynne and loses to Masha, or retains, beats Masha, and it's JC holding both belts, and then JC loses the NXT Women's title just separately, and it's well, she was co-champion for a month and lost it anyway. But I just imagine that this is all being set up for Jordynne.
So, as someone who is also not very tapped into the Impact or the TNA side of things, I would say that it's probably not the right assumption to say that they're either upset or disappointed with how Masha Slamovich has been doing as champion. It's just that if you're given the option of putting your championship on a WWE name, albeit from NXT, especially if someone who has a very strong connection to TNA in the form of Jordynne Grace when she does win the title at Evolution, then you take that opportunity. I think it's just something that's not so much fallen in their lap, but they've come together and say, okay, this just makes sense for all parties to put it on probably our biggest women's champion from TNA's perspective of the modern era, give her back the title while she's also featuring it on WWE TV on a week-to-week basis, holding both titles, and then we eventually trade it over. The biggest issue with that is who she potentially drops that title to, which would likely be Tessa Blanchard.
Yeah, that's so. True.
But that's also what I think might be part of the issue with this, is that there obviously we know of the relationship between WWE and TNA, and I think that there might be hesitation in WWE of, okay, they sign Tessa back to them. They're an independent company from WWE. They can do what they want in terms of signings. But it's a case of maybe we don't necessarily want to see Tessa holding the championship, which is why Tessa's had to just be kind of just doing a lot of middle-of-the-road feud. She's fighting Indy Hartwell on Slammiversary in just a mid-card match. And it's a case of, okay, realistically, they probably signed her with the intention of, okay, Slammiversary time or maybe Bound for Glory time, she'll be fighting for the Knockouts Championship. And they seemingly have there hasn't been much movement or progression in that area, whereas Masha's just been defending the titles against basically anyone else in TNA from what I've seen. Like, there's like the former Xia Li and a few other people, like Tasha Steele and people along those lines that she's been having matches with. But, she's I think she's a very good champion. She's a good wrestler, but it's more of a case of you can't pass up this opportunity if it presents itself to you to have Jordynne Grace come back, win the title, parade it on WWE TV. It just makes sense from their perspective.
So you think it's more WWE was like, yeah, we could do that, or like, how about this idea, rather than them being like, can we maybe get her back because we don't really love this Masha thing?
Oh, it's definitely not a case of not loving Masha. I think they do really like Masha Slamovich and think that they wouldn't have had the title on her for as long as that she has held the title, because she was the person that beat Jordynne Grace in the first place for it. So she's held it for a long time. I don't think that it's due to that. I think it's partly due to not enough strong competition for Masha Slamovich to realistically take the championship from her outside of Tessa Blanchard, and there's problems associated with that. And then just the fact of, I think it's a mutually beneficial thing, because yes, TNA get the advantage of having their Knockout champion be a regular feature on NXT and doing their bits pieces there, but I think WWE gets the little kudos of like, oh, it's a first time ever thing. Well, our champion is also the world champion of another promotion. I mean, they already have someone with that. Trick Williams is the world champion of TNA as well. So there's so much precedent attached to this. So I don't think don't think it's a case of TNA going on their hands and knees and saying, please put our world title on one of your stars, please. It's more of a case of, I think it just works out for all parties.
You're going in the same direction that I am, though, that you're pretty sure that it's going to be Jordynne Grace rather than JCJ.
It makes zero sense. Yeah, it makes zero sense for any other direction to go with.
I'd be shocked.
It kind of spoils a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, that, it's a possibility. Like, you never really know. Maybe they do have so much faith in JC Jane that they want to put her over there, or maybe they do want to move Jordynne up to the main roster soon enough where she can't really be doing that. But she could just be down to be on both companies, and it seems way more likely that it would be Grace than anything else to me.
The only other, even like, and this is obviously like a massive stretch anyway, but the only other possible scenario I could see is that Tracy Jane retains the championship at Evolution and then loses it on the episode of NXT to Blake Monroe in between that and Slammiversary.
Well, then it's like, can we get Monroe back? Yeah.
Well, that's the only two options, because there's no way they're putting JC Jane against Masha Slamovich, I don't think.
I think if that was the case, it would be very, very surprising that they would go in that direction, to be like, let's set this all up, and not even, set it up in a way that it would be like, as far as I'm aware, it's not natural. Like, there hasn't been like, Masha has been popping up and screwing over Fatal Influence or something. You know what I mean? Like, maybe they've been doing something on TNA that I'm unaware of, but it just sort of seemed like it's coming out of nowhere. We do have another championship that did change hands this week. And this one, I do feel like, was not at all set up in advance. And that's on Monday Night Raw. They had the quote unquote, the setup, the build of this World Tag Team Championship match was last week. Adam Pearce is like, that match is happening. That's it. The New Day has been not doing much with these tag titles. They won them from the War Raiders at WrestleMania, and then they continued to basically fight the War Raiders and the Creed brothers a little bit after WrestleMania. But they've been starting this like story that never went anywhere yet, where it seems like they were trying to split up A-Town Down Under and that like they were in the years of Grayson Waller. And out of nowhere, it's just, well, Finn Balor and JD McDonough are getting a tag team title shot, and they just win it. So New Day, no longer champs. Balor and JD McDonough, they are. And I could see this being a couple different scenarios, and I'm not a fan of either of this being like the rationale for it. But, there's a cause and effect for everything, literally everything. And sometimes it makes no sense, but we'll go down that rabbit hole. One, it could be they weren't liking what the New Day was up to, and they weren't liking trying to write for the New Day even, because they weren't really writing much for them. They weren't really doing much. So either they didn't have ideas, or it just wasn't working out in some way. And they decided, well, we want to go back to the status quo. That's the easiest option. Let's just do that. Option number two is, whether they liked or disliked anything that was going on with the New Day, they still could have just been like, we don't know what to do other than to just put these belts back on the Judgment Day, or that they really like it that way. I think that they like the status quo of it being Judgment Day, because we've seen this group basically do the exact same thing for how many years now? Like 3 years, 4 years? They like Judgment Day, quote, holds all the gold, but by that they mean mostly that they win the tag team titles and then maybe like a mid-card title or something along those lines. And I don't think it's a matter of like, well, we have to have them have the titles right now, especially because they were building up this whole Finn Balor and Dominic Mysterio thing. That's just got to be put on hold now. And I don't think that it was a matter of like anything set up where it would make sense for the New Day to lose the titles to the Judgment Day. As far as I'm aware, unless they've been doing stuff on the international only feed, where for some reason, for you being on the United States side of Netflix, you don't get storylines. Nothing that I've seen has been like setting up the idea of the Judgment Day being the ones to beat the New Day. So it feels more to me like they reached a point where they decided either it would be easier or preferable, or both, that they would just put the belts on the Judgment Day and that's it, rather than that there's another reason for it. Because I also can't see there being any like, we want these babyface tag team champions next and they have to beat the Judgment Day for them rather than beating the New Day. You know what I mean? Sometimes you do transitional champions and you're like, let's put the belt on. I mean, it might even be JC, like we just talked about. They might have decided, we want Stephanie Vaquer to not be champion anymore. We want to bring her up to the main roster. And we don't want Jordynne Grace to beat her. We want her to beat a heel. So let's put it on JC, and then she could beat JC. To me, this doesn't read as, we want other babyface tag champs, but they can't beat the New Day. So it has to be more pro Judgment Day. Either it's easier, or it's just their preference for status quo, or anti New Day.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult for me to kind of judge as someone who doesn't watch week to week to know what the rationale would necessarily be. I mean, I think that one thing I can comment on is just the whole New Day heel turn was an absolute failure. Like,
yep.
A great like single moment, as these things often are, that then just didn't get any serious follow up beyond them, just winning the tag team titles, and then but like not actually really doing anything with them. And yeah, as I say, they've just transitioned back to a tried and tested team of what going from one tried and tested team to another tried and tested team in Balor and McDonough. I think it's just a case of, if it was just me from like an uneducated and non-viewer perspective, I think it's just a case that like he just won't let go of the Judgment Day, in the same way that he still hasn't really let go of the Bloodline. Yeah, that you haven't got Roman and the Usos in anymore, but it's just, it's Bloodline 2.0 with Solo and his crew. So, and they've never really let go of the Judgment Day, and they just continually, have elements of infighting, have members leave, like Rhea and Damian Priest at certain points, but then you have, new people join, like Roxanne has come in now, and so it just feels like they're going to keep that brand and that faction going for as long as humanly possible. And the only way to really do that is to keep them feeling like they're winning as a team, or they're even with all the infighting or issues that they have or they're teasing, they'll then come back together and they'll win big titles. Like at the moment, Judgment Day holds the women's tag titles, the tag titles, and the Intercontinental Championship. Like they hold it pretty much every championship you can hold on Raw outside of the world title. So it's like, okay, it's just okay. Judgment Day are back, and they'll be happy for a couple of weeks, and then someone will lose their titles, and then it'll be like, oh, the Judgment Day's falling apart again, and you just rinse repeat that because that's what I say. Not necessarily calling him out as like bad booker Triple H in this regard, but he does have a hard time moving on from the faction that's doing really well.
Yeah.
Like he will just it will get to the point of stagnation before he arguably well past the point of stagnation at this point with the Judgment Day, but he goes far past its sell by date before he actually will make the big switch, wherever that ends up being.
And that's we have history of that in NXT as well. He got something good with the Undisputed Era and was like, all right, well, that's just I know I've got that for however many years that was. And every once in a while they would do a little bit of a tease, and it was a little, a little bit in fighting here and there. But when did they break up? When it was past the point of expiration and it didn't really get a chance to do what they wanted to do. And then everybody left. You know what I mean? It was like he waited until the 11th hour to do it and then wasn't able to actually break up anybody in the proper way. Never did the 4 Horsewomen versus the 4 Horsewomen either. Could have done that.
It's what it's what he's brought up on. I mean, he's brought up on the era of the 4 Horsemen, which is a faction which had members come and go, but pretty much either stayed or went on hiatus for a little while and then came back and then was in and out occasionally. But it still existed as 4 Horsemen from the late 80s into the 90s and arguably even into the 2000s. But it's a case of that he probably wants to just have factions that are kind of, I don't want to say eternal, but can exist regardless of the members that are in it, and it will just give and take certain members, but keep the faction name going. Well, arguably, there's precedent for that. I mean, New Japan is a clear example of it, of having definitely well past the sell-by dates, but having factions like Chaos has been around for like 10 plus years, but was just, would always just take members in and out. Same with pretty much all of their factions they had at the time. Bullet Club, even. Like, that's the probably prime example of people just like certain wrestlers would come and go, join other companies, come back, but the whole brand would just continue and move on. So maybe he's planning on doing the same sort of thing with things like Bloodline and Judgment Day, that they still technically exist, but they just have different iterations. And this championship is just a means of, just giving them a bit more spotlight, a bit more attention, and just taking it off the New Day, because realistically, the New Day weren't doing anything with it. And so that might just be the whole crux of it. Maybe we're looking way too deep into it. And it's just saying, well, it's a title change. Title changes are fun.
Could be that.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, and it's so like no one cares about tag titles. And so let's just have a title change because it's like a fun little moment that people got to see live on TV. So.
And there's a possibility that they might have been thinking, well, we want to put the belts on the Judgment Day so we could do the whole, they run this whole division thing other than, Gunther, because at this point they do have the women's tag titles, the men's tag titles, and the Intercontinental Championship. So outside of Gunther and Becky,
that, the Judgment Day run the show.
Like, they could just be like, well, we really, really like doing that. And, to me, that ran its course a long time ago when the group was in a better spot than it is right now. And, to each their own. I'm sure that if you were to ask Triple H, he'd be like, I think that every match is the most amazing thing, because he's never going to say like, that didn't work, or this is kind of dumb, or we had an idea and nobody else liked it except for me or something. But Then again, you've got Rusev. So Rusev is tanking right now. I do not understand what they're like, why they think that this is just good enough on its own. But
again, it's just like another instance of instant gratification. Like, you get that moment of, I'd say it's worked out better for some people. I'm not saying that all of them have fallen this way, but for some signings that you just get from AEW, for that one moment of like Tony fumbled, like he's he brought them back home and they're back where they belong, and it's like, oh, but then you actually see them and realize, oh, that's why they're no longer in AEW, or they didn't want, they did, like, it's almost like a case, oh, it wasn't a case of he didn't want to work or try hard because he was in AEW, he just didn't want to do it because he's just
didn't want to do it.
The crowd he just wants to make money with as little effort as possible.
Yeah, the crowd was super duper into him in Rusev Day. He goes to AEW. Well, that's when he's really going to get his push. He gets a little push, goes downhill. Let's bring him back. It's you're not getting a Cody Rhodes out of this, it seems. But no, put him against Sheamus 6 times in a row. I'm sure that'll make the difference. I
mean, arguably that revived Sheamus's career when it felt like he was floundering, and that best of 7 series with Cesaro basically revitalized his entire career.
Yeah, but those were good.
Yeah, well, it does all very much depend on having good matches in between that. So yeah, that is the difference. Yeah.
We talked about some of the NXT stuff already with the spoilers. I don't think there's really anything to talk about until we get into next week. It's just, the stuff we talked about before. Oddly enough, Yoshiki and Amora won the number 1 contenders match, etc., etc. Here's a different thing going on for a non-TV related thing. Cody Rhodes has not been confirmed for this, but it seems like this is heading in the same direction that it came with some other news. We know that Roman Reigns is going to be Akuma in a Street Fighter live action movie, attempt number 2 that they're, I guess attempt number 3. They did that Chun-Li movie. Apparently Cody Rhodes might be Guile. And if you are looking at YouTube right now, like, you could see the thumbnail that I created for this. I could kind of see it. It's like, he wouldn't have been the first person that I would have thought of, especially because I haven't seen him act yet. So I don't know if he is a good actor or not. I guess I'm going to find that out when I see Naked Gun, because he's apparently like a bartender in at least one scene for that. But just by feeding this into ChatGPT and just being like, give me one image of Cody Rhodes as if he were Guile. If they give him that stupid haircut, which they should, I mean, that's Guile. I can see this potentially working. And Street Fighter is ridiculous and lame in its own kind of pro wrestling sort of way. So for anybody that's like, oh, they're casting pro wrestlers, you really think that you're going to get great actors doing stuff here? Like, they have David Dastmalchian is going to be M. Bison now. And he's a great actor. He's been in lots of different movies and stuff. People might recognize him more if they saw his face than if they heard his name. But like, he was in The Dark Knight. He was one of the crew in Ant-Man. He was the lead in Late Night with the Devil, I think was the name of the movie. That like late night talk show horror film, which is pretty good. Cool. Like, you get some good actors like that, but then you need some camp. And I am all down for this idea of Cody potentially being Guile.
I'll take your word for it. I've never played Street Fighter. I know of Akuma because of his appearances in like Tekken and stuff like that, so I get a concept behind him. But I don't know enough about Guile or his resemblance to Cody Rhodes to get a suggestion one way or the other to say, oh yeah, that's a good pick.
You know what he looks like, right?
I know what Cody looks like. I don't know what Guile looks like.
Google Guile real fast, and I can send you a picture. Because
right, okay. All right. So looks like Lieutenant Surge, right?
Yeah, basically. And this is the thumbnail. that I'm going with for this episode of the hot tags.
Yeah, I'd say that Cody's not as big as him.
I mean, yeah, nobody really realistically would be. He's drawn like Bruce Timm in the DC animated universe.
Yeah, I'd say if it's a more realistic one, then yeah, you can kind of make sense of it. It'll be interesting to see how they get Cody's hair to look like that.
I'm assuming a wig, but it'd be weird if they don't do that, because this is a character that was played by Jean-Claude Van Damme in that other movie, which goes to show, exactly what we're working with. It's not like you're like, oh man, we had some Oscar-winning material beforehand, and now
no one should. Yeah, no one should be expecting any sort of like great acting performance in this one. They need people that can partially act, but mostly can do action stuff.
Right.
Which is definitely what pro wrestlers are there to be, really. They're just glorified stuntmen, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, for the most part. And we get to see him do this Sonic Boom thing or whatever and flip around and all that. I think that this could end up working out really well. But as far as I'm aware, it's not 100% confirmed yet. It just seems like it is at least going around the rumor mill really well. And the last time that did happen, it was Roman Reigns being for Akuma, and that ended up getting confirmed. So it's a possibility, and it's something that I would be very much looking forward to, if it's even just for the idea of how ridiculous it is. Because I'm not going into a Street Fighter movie expecting it to be something that I would be like, this should be best adapted screenplay. Or like, So that's on the oddball story side of things. Let's move over to AEW and talk a little bit about some of those stories. This has been a thing that I don't know if there's just like people deciding that they want to take something and run with it, or if they actually have something to it. But rumor has it, take it with a grain of salt, et cetera, that WWE might be interested in signing Danhausen and Private Party, and that the more that we see Britt Baker complain online or say things like she tweeted out something about a bottle of water might be $1 at the store, and it might be $2 at the gym, and it might be $6 at an airport or whatever, and it's the same bottle of water, but the only thing that changed its perception of its value was the location. Of course, people were taking that and going, okay, well, I'm not valued enough in AEW. If I were to go somewhere else, they would really value me, which then makes people just go, okay, does she want to go to WWE? Which then makes people go, well, is that WWE interested in signing Britt Baker? So whether or not any of this is true, the idea of potentially WWE signing Danhausen, Britt Baker, and or Private Party. If I'm WWE, I don't know what value Danhausen has for me. And I don't know if I really want to attach myself to Britt Baker after all the controversy that's been surrounding her, unless they can vet that those stories are not true. I'd be interested in Private Party maybe for NXT, but I don't think I would sign the other two.
So in terms of like just all three of them, just going from all three of the acts, should I say, because Private Party would be two people. But I don't think, first of all, I'd say that I don't think any of them are a loss for AEW.
No.
I think right now AEW is at a kind of zenith in terms of their TV and the talent they have on screen week to week, which none of these three acts are at the moment. And I don't think AEW is losing out by letting those people go. As I say, in a different environment, they might do better. I'm not saying any real question on the talent that they possess, regardless of it. But it is a certain point of, like, AEW's been around for like 5-6 years now. And yeah, these people outside Danhausen are day one AEW acts, and there's a certain amount of responsibility and like reverence to people that were there from day one. But realistically, as soon as you start bringing in other top level talent, there is a demand on those acts to step up their game. I think Private Party did for a bit, but I just don't think it was sustainable when they won the tag titles. They just didn't, and that's partly due to the booking. It's partly due to their performance. It's always like a mismatch of things. Britt Baker's situation, I think, is very centrally down on her. Not like it's a mixture of injuries, are obviously an issue, and I just don't think that she kept up from an in-ring perspective, and you need to keep up from an in-ring perspective in AEW in order to be considered like a top name by the fans. I mean, I know certain people will look at it and say, "Oh, AEW just turned their back on Britt Baker. Like, what did she really ever do wrong?" It's all goes, well, she never evolved in the ring, and then AEW signed a lot of women who were better than her in the ring and better than her, or at least as good as her on the microphone. So, and if you can't keep up with them and like take your game to the next level and just stay at a certain level, then you are going to get surpassed. And she just doesn't have the same backing or the same kudos behind her as she had in the very early days of AEW, where she was an absolute pillar of the company. No question about that. It's just AEW's women's division and AEW in general is in a completely different place than they were 3 or 4 years ago. And even like at the back end of her full-time run before she came back with that awful Mercedes match and feud and the really weird segment with Serena Deeb, the last thing we'll probably ever see of Britt Baker on AEW TV.
Which one was that?
There's the one where she where Serena comes out and Britt Baker just says at the camera multiple times, "Nobody cares."
Yeah.
So just burying the whole idea of feuding with Serena Deeb in the first place, and that was the last thing she ever did before. I think she went out with another like short-term injury, but has never come back to TV since. But yeah, that even like in the back end of like her full-time run when she was like supporting Jamie Hayter and all this other stuff, even at that point, it was quite evident that certain people had started to pass her by in ring and in just pure match quality. And there were issues as well. I think that like she wasn't given enough promo time in her final year at the company, and that was kind of always her strong suit, was her strong character work and her strong promo ability, and she just never got enough of a feature definitely in like 2023. I don't think that she was spotlighted enough. But anything beyond that point, I just feel like it just is diminishing returns. So in terms of their potential going to WWE, Danhausen's like a gimmick. He's just a pure gimmick. But WWE likes pure gimmicks because they're going to sign Joe Hendry, and they're going to sign, or going to use at least that El Chameleon more and more. That's WWE. They
Mr.
just
Iguana.
bring people. Mr. Iguana, sorry, not Chameleon. Wrong thing. Yeah, Mr. Iguana. He's a Santino Marella type. That like James Ellsworth type. He's just a joke character that will come in to do joke spots, have a couple of matches, and soak up the ha-has for the fans that are there. Not like diminishing them in any stretch of imagination, but that is the WWE template. Danhausen works a lot more in WWE than he does in AEW. I don't know whether they would want to sign him. Like, I wouldn't sign him, but I can understand the rationale for signing him for that reason. Private Party, that could work. They're a good tag team act. There's no problem with just adding a bit of depth to the tag team division. They definitely would be like one of your top tag team names anywhere. But they could work out. They could maybe get a title run in NXT, or they could just go up to the main roster and just be a nice little team to have some decent matches with the likes of Fraxium, Street Profits, Pretty Deadly. There's no harm in having a decent tag team to add a bit of depth to your roster. The Britt Baker one would feel like point scoring, or an attempt at point scoring over AEW, because of this was like your day one woman, like almost like the equivalent of Cody for the men. It's like this was your foundation for your women's division for your first 3-4 years. This was the pillar. And so signing her feels like, okay, we've taken Cody as like an EVP, an actual founding member of AEW, and now we've taken the foundational pillar of your women's division. And maybe there's less pressure on WWE. There's definitely more emphasis on promo and character, which is Baker's strong suit. And there's less emphasis on in-ring ability. Not that it doesn't matter, but it's less important. So maybe it's one of those situations that Britt is right, that in a different environment like WWE, which is more contingent on being a strong character and a strong voice and a strong presence, she would be more highly valued and a more sought after commodity than in a company that is far more focused on in-ring ability. So I think it could necessarily work if she goes to WWE, but there is, as you rightly said, there is that whole backstage culture issue. It's really the Thunder Rosa stuff is the big sticking point for Britt Baker. Is, do you want to bring that kind of attitude into WWE? Would Britt Baker feel comfortable being probably another spoke in the wheel in WWE as opposed to what she was used to in the first few years of AEW, being that pillar character? But then again, she's not doing anything now, so it can't really be much worse going there. And it also really hones down on whether she wants to just continue in wrestling entirely. She's a dentist. She's a qualified dentist with a dental practice. Like, maybe she just wants to focus her entire life around that and just be her career. Maybe take just a break from wrestling, or just do, independent gigs or one-off things while she just is a practicing dentist instead. So there's multiple different routes we could take with it. Just because she wants to leave AEW doesn't mean that she would necessarily go to WWE.
Yeah, I mean, it's a two-way street, too. Like, if she wants to go to WWE, they have to want her first. Like, she can't just go there. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't sign a deal for a company and be like, I work here now. And they'd be like, no, you don't. So they would.
I'm sure at least one wrestler has done that.
I mean, there's that.
Even though they're AEW at some point.
That Montalvo guy that kept popping up at the Performance Center, just being like, "Give me a job." It's like, well, we don't even want to let you in the building, sir, let alone give you a job. But I mean, that would have to be. She would have to want to leave AEW. They would have to eventually. I mean, eventually, at some point, she would leave. Like, her contract would expire at some point, and if she wanted to leave, she would have the option of not signing again. They can't just perpetually hold her forever. And then WWE would also want to sign her, and then they would have to come to all the terms and then all that stuff. And if I'm WWE, I'm thinking she's like in her mid-30s. I think she's like 34. She does have this dentistry side practice or main practice, whatever you want to call it. And is she better than what she was at the beginning of AEW? Or is she stagnated, or is she worse? And what value can she bring to NXT? Because realistically, she's not going to go straight to the main roster. She would go to NXT. And then at that point, do you want to have her in NXT? Do you want to have that person backstage in that kind of capacity? Are there any rumors that are true? Is she causing issues backstage? Because everybody has issues with some people. Like, nobody is loved by everybody. But the more smoke, the fire. There's more smoke that there is, the more likely that there's fire, I should say. And Queen Aminata tweeted out right afterward a picture of a bottle of water from her hotel. You have to assume that's a shot at Britt Baker, which then means, either Aminata is a problem, or Baker is, or they both are. And I'm not hearing anything about people complaining about Queen Aminata, but I've heard a lot about issues with Britt Baker. So being an outsider, we don't know. But if I'm WWE and I'm hearing these stories, I'm going to ask around and I'm going to be like, look, was this a justifiable situation? Is she completely wrong? Is she completely right? And if you find out enough information about it being that she's like a pain in the ass to work with, I don't think that there's enough value to justify putting that into the roster, But people have proven that wrong. Look at all the controversy that's happened with CM Punk. And he seems to not have any issues with people right now. Whether you could say that it's worth it, it's a different story. But, people have had issues with other people and they've had issues with no other person. So maybe the issues Baker had with somebody is entirely just those two people don't get along. If it's MJF and I'm WWE, I'm thinking, well, I'd rather have MJF. Do I really want to sign the person that he's got issues with and then make that harder? That's another thing too. There's a lot to this other than just, do you think Britt Baker would be a good fit in WWE as far as pure character and all? I think a lot of people lose track of that when they are thinking of like X wrestler could go to AEW and be a good in-ring performer. Yeah, but do they want that person? This person could go to WWE. Look at Rusev again. Is it worth it? I don't know. I don't know how much they signed him for. Right now, I'm not feeling like they're getting much out of Rusev. And, Baker could be in that kind of position too. But I would be a little surprised at this point if Danhausen and Baker do go to WWE, but I'm not going to be surprised if Private Party does. That's going to be my, unless something else changes, that's my prediction. Maybe I'm wrong though. I've been plenty wrong plenty of times before.
I would say if I was a betting person putting money on it, I'd say in terms of, because I'm probably almost on the exact opposite. If I was going with who I think are most likely to be signed, I'm probably putting Baker number 1, Danhausen number 2, and Private Party number 3.
So you get a wide range of.
Yeah.
One of us is going to be at least partially right.
Well, again, if I was a betting person, I think that there's probably a good chance they all get signed. The one caveat I'd say with Britt Baker is that if whether she actually just wants to continue in wrestling or just wants to pursue dentistry full time. I think they'll take a gamble on her just being in a different environment, and also knowing that it's probably unlikely that she'd ever go back to AEW. So almost not in the same level of CM Punk because she has an actual full time career that she can fall back to. But it's more of a case of with Punk, he's in the last chance saloon, so he can't fuck around or do any of the stuff that he was doing in AEW, throwing his weight around, because there's nowhere else he can go. Same thing really applies to Baker. This is the only big place that she can make money going forward in wrestling. So if she was to cause issues behind the scenes, then she'd just be out and would never be able to really get back in again.
I mean, maybe she could go to TNA.
She's not going to make anywhere near the sort of money. So, I mean, the benefit with TNA is that you don't have to work as much.
Right. So she could work a limited schedule and then focus on her dental career, and then just be like, all right, I show up on Tuesdays and I do my taping and I get paid less than I did in AEW, but then again, I'm not working as much either. Yeah, could be that.
Well, also AEW actually aren't really working that much anyway. That's probably the biggest issue with her potentially joining WWE, is that she probably would have to quit her practice because she has to be touring.
That's true. Yeah.
The WWE schedule is not as harsh as it used to be, but she still probably would have to be working 4 days a week at the very least. I'm not saying that means that I don't know how her practice works or what her kind of role in it is, whether she's just one of several dentists that are there and she can just work a couple of days, but it's more of a case of, it's especially with WWE, you get what, I'm not saying that again, WWE's the global brand, it's the biggest wrestling brand, which means that she gets more exposure, and that means that it may be harder for her to continue with the dental practice if she's on a WWE platform, whereas AEW, it's a little bit more under the radar for people that aren't wrestling fans.
Or there could be even a potential benefit of I can raise my prices because now I'm a WWE superstar that's going to be doing your dental work. It's some people would pay more for that.
Yeah, potentially, but there's also probably more likelihood of, there's some weird people stalking outside my dental practice now.
Oh, there's definitely issues like that.
I'm sure she got some of that with AEW as well, but it's probably more profound. I mean, we don't really hear those stories as often with AEW wrestlers as we do with WWE ones.
Right. And it's a byproduct of being, less exposed, but also it's it's a different fan base.
It's being a famous woman, realistically. That's
just being a woman in general.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
You keep stacking on top of it, fame, on top of already being a woman, an attractive woman on top of that, you
attractive rich woman.
Yeah, there's she's working everything against her on that front, but look at the stalker with the Liv Morgan situation recently and all, but I guess we're gonna have to find out when her contract expires because eventually we're going to just see her name probably just off the roster page. And then, you know, guess who pops up in NXT? It's, you know who that is, as opposed to Britt Baker. And then 2 weeks later, we get a contract signing with, I don't know what Samantha Jones or something. Like, you know, she wouldn't go by Britt Baker. They would end up changing her name. Something Yankum, maybe. AEW itself, though, we got Dynamite 300 and Collision 100. We know the spoilers for Collision 100, so we'll say that last. But the Dynamite 300 show had an opening promo with Hangman Adam Page and Jon Moxley setting up the switch up for something that we kind of anticipated. It's going to be a Texas Death Match at All In. Makes perfect sense. I would have been shocked if it didn't announce that at some point.
That's perfect. It sets the stage for what I imagine is going to be their equivalent of the Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, Avengers Assemble match from not previous WrestleMania, but the WrestleMania before that. Yeah, I think that we're going to see a lot of interference and a lot of people involved, but he's like Page as well in it in order like to just have a great match, but have people involved. I imagine they will do something where almost like the Death. If I was booking it, I'd have the Death Riders get involved almost immediately, and then have them get chased off, so you can have the singles match happen, and then get other people coming in later on to try and have their part in it. So yeah, I'd say I like the segment. I think it sets it up well. So they can't fuck this up. They cannot allow themselves to fuck this up.
MJF is number 2 in the Casino Gauntlet, which turned into a lot of like, and then Briscoe comes out and we do that, and then Jet Speed comes out and we do that, and then the Hurt Syndicate fights with them, and then we, you know, they're really much hinging on this. A lot of stuff revolves around that Hurt Syndicate stuff going on, but there was also a lot of things on this episode that it was, you beat me up, but I keep getting back up. It seems like they just kind of hit that nail on the head like 7 times on this episode of Dynamite.
I think they just need to do that for the the Moxley Hammer thing that's kind of been a setup for a while, but I think they need to do that for the Jet Speed and Hurt Syndicate stuff, because Hurt Syndicate have been so dominant. They need to just establish that, yeah, we'll get beaten up, but we'll just continue to fight, and you won't be able to keep us down. I've heard the speculation is the match at All In for the tag titles is actually going to be a 3-way.
Who else will be in there?
It's going to be Christian and Nick Wayne.
Well, the weird thing is, yeah, I mean, the spoilers for Collision, for anybody that's, you know, they don't want to know, but spoilers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Nick Wayne does get involved, and it becomes a 3-way. And when I was writing out the spoilers for this, I didn't get any information about why. All I had seen was Kevin Knight pins Shelton Benjamin in a 3-way with Nick Wayne. And I was like, but they literally announced that it was, I'm challenging Shelton Benjamin. What the hell is it with Nick Wayne? And I'm like, plenty of times people get these things wrong, and it'll end up being even like somebody will say, I don't know, that Leo Rush beat Action Andretti, and then it's like, no, actually it's Action Andretti beat Leo Rush or something. So I was like, maybe there's a mix up. Maybe there's like somebody else pinned Nick Wayne in another match. But the more I looked into it, the more I'm like, oh, I'm not seeing anything else. So I guess some kind of an angle happens where Nick Wayne gets involved. And that would make sense then if they do something on Collision that leads to that, and then it becomes a 3-way.
Well, this story has been going for a little while. Like, not super long, but Christian did announce a couple of, I don't know whether it was, can't remember if it was Dynamite or Collision, but he announced that him and Nick Wayne were going after the tag team title as the first father-son tag team to hold the tag team championships.
Oh, that brings back that intergenerational shit.
Yeah. And then the idea that then they beat Big Bill and Brian Keith in a tag team match in Collision. So they've established themselves as like a winning tag team, and then he had a backstage segment with MVP to just assert the fact that they're going after the tag titles. And I think that it makes sense for 3 reasons. One, Christian's a great politicker, and so he's gotten himself into All In, which is, his right to do that. Secondly, it means that Kevin Knight and Mike Bailey, or Christian and Nick Wayne, can win the titles without having to pin the Hurt Syndicate. So you get the titles off the Hurt Syndicate without having to actually pin them, which feels like a smart move if that's the route that you wish to take. And thirdly, it probably makes the match a little bit more interesting from like just a pure in-ring perspective, because even though I prefer in most circumstances a traditional tag team match, it means that you get to see Jet Speed a bit more on offense against Nick Wayne and Christian rather than always being on the defensive against the Hurt Syndicate.
True, and if they're gonna get beaten down the whole match, then it's just a squash.
Well, I think that I think regardless of which route they were going to take, I thought Jet Speed were going to win the tag titles.
I was assuming that they wouldn't, but if they have the triple threat, now that's changing my perspective. What's the other thing? It's Jet Speed Air, I think, right? And they throw in, what's his face?
AR Fox.
AR Fox, yeah.
Who has, he's high on my list for Wrestler of the, not Wrestler of the Year, but like in-ring Performer of the Year for awards at the end of it, because he's just he loses pretty much every match he has, but they're great matches, so I'm kind of enjoying it.
Most improved, maybe, at the very least.
Oh, he's definitely, he was persona non grata after what happened at All In 2023, so it's a case of now he's on TV pretty much every week, either on Collision or Dynamite, so.
I had skipped over a thing that happened in the meantime between these two things, but I guess that's partially just because in my brain it was like, well, what's the point? But they did another Mercedes Moné against Mina Shirakawa match just to have her retain, and I was like, the only interesting thing I could see happening here is if Toni Storm costs Mercedes the TBS championship, and Shirakawa is somebody that I could see winning that title, so I was going into this being like, maybe it is going to be a title change, and now it's just a match for the sake of that again, and I was like, this is the thing that I hate. Like, I don't really see the point in doing that again just for that. So I was disappointed in that.
I don't always say again. They've never had a match on AEW before.
Didn't they already fight at a pay-per-view?
No, that was Tony against Mina Shirakawa.
I thought Mercedes and Shirakawa had a match like midway earlier this year, or like at some point like last year or something like that.
Oh, they had it at. Oh, it was at. They had it at Wrestle Dynasty.
Oh, that's what I'm thinking of, I guess, then.
Yeah,
I felt like I had seen this. And I mean, again, it's hard for me to also distinguish when I feel like I've seen the same matches a lot in WWE and AEW. A lot of times it's like, all right, this has happened 7 times. And it's like, no, it's happened twice, but they've just had feuds where they interact and they fight each other on like in a brawl 19 times. And I'm like, all right, well, then I just merged that in my brain. But
I think like, at the end of the day, like you want Mercedes to be wrestling on TV. So and she's been feuding with Toni Storm, and Toni Storm is best friends with Mina Shirakawa on screen, so it's the right match to have. And yeah, she's going to defend the title because she's not going to lose on the route to the championship match, even if it was the case for like what Mercedes' first loss on AEW TV is just going to be a random like roll up thing, distraction roll up to Mina Shirakawa before she fights for the world title. You're never ever going to do that. No booker that's sensible is ever going to do that. So, yeah, it's just a means of having her have a good match with a good opponent in the build-up to, just building momentum going into the title match. Pretty competent booking. You're going to put Mercedes on Dynamite 300. You're going to have at least some involvement with Mercedes and Toni Storm on, like, this, like, landmark episode of Dynamite.
Nothing else really. Like, it's kind of bog standard stuff. Tag matches and not everything over the rest of that.
A lot
good
of
matches,
Superman
but
crossover.
Yeah,
a lot of Superman crossover for the heroes and villains matches. So yeah, you have the Young Bucks and Takeshita beat Bandito and Paragon. Then first of all, the Swerve Strickland, we mentioned it earlier, but the Swerve Strickland Will Ospreay thing of the challenge to the Young Bucks to earn to take the EVPs off of the Young Bucks, and they specifically said they're not going to become the EVPs. They're just going to hand that off to the people, as it were, and say there's only one guy that runs the show, and that's Tony Khan. But then Ospreay saying that in order to get that stipulation made, he said that either he or Strickland, if they lose, would no longer be able to challenge for the AEW World Title for 1 year. And I think this is really good for the match because it really makes it's similar to a lot of the matches here where it's very unpredictable. Because you could totally imagine a scenario where Ospreay and Strickland don't fight for the title for a year, especially because a year would be the next All In, or actually even further along than All In, because All In next year will be in August. So it would definitely be past the year point, and you could see Ospreay then earning the right to challenge for the title a year beyond. It could lead to like things like more of a rivalry between Strickland and Ospreay because Strickland's pissed that Ospreay made that decision and cost him the opportunity to challenge for the World Championship. But then you could also definitely see a scenario where the Young Bucks lose the EVP thing because that storyline's a bit long in the tooth now, and they can just move on from it and just go back to the way things were. It's just not even like Tony Khan's running the show. It's more just like it's an anonymous presence that books the matches and things just happen in between that. So yeah, it makes it available on both sides. And then the main event was Kuchiko Okada defeated Kota Ibushi, and Ibushi looked the best I've seen him in about 3 years, both physically and just from a match quality standpoint. As I say, it definitely wasn't one of their best matches of all time. They've had much better matches in New Japan when they were both a lot younger and arguably more motivated. But I think that the fact that Ibushi can actually have a match like this after last year having some of the most awful matches, like that match with Fuji that he had in Noah, where his legs basically both got broke, his ankles both got broken within a couple of minutes of the match happening, and then he just like a shell of himself trying to go his way through a 20-minute match on broken legs pretty much, to this where he could actually have a really solid, competent main event match with Okada where he even did like a tiger bomb off the top rope. Yeah, it's good to see him recover and be back to close to the level that he used to be at. He's never going to be the old Kota Ibushi, but to be a Kota Ibushi at the level of like a Shibata now, which is like a very steady, good hand. I think that's probably the best we could have hoped for from where he was just a couple of like a year or so ago.
I mean, it had been like 2 years or so since his last match.
Oh no, he's wrestled. He's wrestled
in AEW. I mean,
oh yeah, since AEW. Yeah, his last match was the Blood and Guts. Or it was like that. It was that 8-man tag thing that tied in with like the Like a Dragon stuff from Yakuza. That's the one that was Paul White's last match as well. Yeah, so yeah, it's been a while since he wrestled in AEW. He has wrestled in Japan since then, so it's not like he's coming in completely cold from this. And also, actually, it's not his last match at AEW because he had a match with Trent a couple of last week, so that was his first match back in AEW.
Technically, yeah, but to see him,
his first big match,
yeah, to see him come back and do 2 matches and be like, all right, he's not immediately injured again, like some other people have unfortunately had and happen in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's good. That's obviously a good thing. He looks in great shape again, or the best shape that he's been in for a while. He'll probably have a good. I mean, hopefully they'll do the Golden Lovers as a tag team match. I don't think they've announced anything for next week. It'd be good to see them do like a tag team match with, Omega and Ibushi versus like Okada and Lance Archer or something. But
yeah, I'm not aware of anything that they've announced for Dynamite.
No,
I think that they were pretty much waiting until Collision to announce that stuff. So
yeah, but that'd be cool if they were able to do that as the final build up for Omega and Okada at the show. So yeah, overall, like it's a good episode of Dynamite, like a nice little homage to like the 300. They didn't really do like a big like video package celebrating everything, but I don't think you need to do that on every single milestone episode of Dynamite.
And that's all the hot takes that I got down, at least. The other spoilers when it comes to Collision, for anybody that does want to know, that's the last topic that I've got down. So if you don't want to know, then by all means skip to the end of this thing or something. But there was one important thing that happened on Collision, and that is the return of Scorpio Sky. apparently they did another one of those Max Caster Who Can Survive the Best Wrestler Alive open challenges, and it was Scorpio Sky that answered the call. Beat Caster in around like 60 seconds or so, and he was accompanied by Christopher Daniels in a suit as his manager, and also Top Flight. So I guess that's a new faction. But yeah, I mean, other things like Kyle Fletcher beats Daniel Garcia. It seems like he's going to get a title shot for the TNT title at All In, maybe involving Daniel Garcia as well. I had seen one report that said that it was a 3-way, but then another one that said that Fletcher beating Garcia means that he gets the title shot and not Garcia. So, it might be one. I mean, it's one or the other, whichever one's true. But like, if you wanted to know, Mystico's team wins the trios match. FTR beats Outrunners. Willow apparently squashes Viperous, and Athena's team wins an all-star 8-woman tag. But the Scorpio Sky thing's pretty interesting. It's been a while since he's been on TV too. He wrestled, I think, I looked it up the other day when I was writing up the report about it. It was something like he wrestled 10 matches in the past 2.5 years or so, and pretty much every single one of them was not in AEW. It's been since September of 2023 or whatever, since he wrestled in ROH. So it's been a long time coming for him to return, and it's cool that he's back.
Yeah, it's they did that thing for a little while where he was doing some sort of weird gimmick that was just doing backstage segments where I think he was doing this motivational thing for a little while, I guess in build up to a potential return, but then I think he got injured again, and so he was on the shelf for a while. I mean, yeah, it's good for him that he's back, and hopefully this is the start of a bit of a, I don't want to say a renewed push. He's never going to be a champion in AEW again. They can't even trust him, and he's at the twilight of his career now, so it's unlikely that will ever happen. But he can always be a solid hand, a solid job guy to come back, beat Matt Caster to re-establish himself, maybe get 1 or 2 other wins against low-level guys, and then slot into a nice jobber to the stars role for them moving forward. But him joining up with Top Flight might be an interesting thing. Could be the inexperienced head of that stable. The Christopher Daniel things make sense because obviously they were together, aligned with Kazarian back then with SCU. So I think that it's good to see him back. I know that they've also been doing things about the faction stuff. Like Ricochet seemingly has found his tag team in terms of the Gates of Agony.
Did not anticipate that.
Well, the crew thing was just too obvious, so they decided to go in a slightly different direction. But I feel it's good for them to be attached to one of the best heels in the company right now. So yeah, maybe they'll just bring back a lot of factions. Scorpio Sky and Top Flight will be another one of those.
I can see a feud definitely happening there, and that would lean more towards pro Ricochet feud. But
I would say because they actually make sense for this one because there'll probably be a lot of ball chants in that match because of both Scorpio Sky and Ricochet. But John Moxley no selling the ball chants that he got in the opening segment was just pretty funny because it's just this is really the wrong place. It wasn't a case of he just shouted the crowd down. He just basically almost looked to the side and says, "What the fuck are they talking about?" And then just carried on with his promo. That was a funny little moment.
They should book Scorpio against Ricochet in a hair versus hair match and be for the first time ever, what the hell do we do?
They do it in a wig versus wig match, and the winner's the one that gets a wig or gets a hair transplant and gets hair.
Starts wearing some pink mohawk or something.
Yeah.
Or I guess if you did a hair versus hair match between those, it would be you have to shave your eyebrows and any kind of facial hair or something. Mm. And then you get what was his name? In NXT.
Marcus Louis.
Yeah. I was gonna say Sylvester Lefort. That was the other guy.
The guy that did have a lot of hair.
Yeah, that was weird. That's weird era of NXT. Carmella comes in and she's like, "Hey, I'm a hairdresser for Enzo." Okay, sure, you can wrestle, Anyway, those are the hot tags for episode 709. As always, drop your comments below. Tell us what you think about all these topics and more. Next week, we're going to have so much that we need to break down because we do need to do predictions for AEW All In, Saturday Night's Main Event, Great American Bash, ROH Supercard of Honor, WWE Evolution, and also Hot Tags. And then when those pay-per-views are over, we're going to have a triple combined post-show for the AEW, NXT, and Saturday Night's Main Event stuff on Saturday night, because I'm certainly not going to be trying to cram a Great American Bash post-show in right before Saturday Night's Main Event while AEW it's running All In. That's not happening. I'll do a triple combo post-show after that, and then on Evolution Day, just the Evolution post-show. It's going to be exhausting, but I hope everybody joins us for those on smarkmom.com and the YouTube channel and elsewhere. I don't know when I'm going to record the Darkcast for July, but I'm probably going to do it sometime soon. Maybe not necessarily this weekend, but we'll figure it out. And keep in mind, too, if you want to make sure that we do other content, the Pick a Poison tier is the best way to make sure that happens, because you get to directly sponsor that. If you want to support/follow. If you want to swallow something, I don't know. Now we're getting into a different discussion. You want to support us another way, Redbubble and TeePublic, Patreon, etc., hop on over to the Discord channel, and also go to amangotree.com, and you'll see all the Linktree list of different social media accounts and stuff that you can follow. That's on my personal side of things. But if you're following Callum, follow him over at Wigmeister14.
Yep, you can find me at Weekmeister14 on Twitter and Blue Sky. Check out the power rankings every single Saturday over on smartcowmoment.com. I rank the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And yes, we're busy next week. It'll also be a busy week for the Fantasy League in terms of a lot of big shows where big points could be scored, both at Evolution and at the NXT Great American Bash. So make sure you tune in for that to see how the points are shaping up, who is doing well as we lead into. It's very tight still at the top. It's gone a lot tighter since luckily Night Champions was very good for me, with both Cody and Jay Cargill on my team both winning big tournaments, so getting big extra points for me. But I'm still languishing behind both Tony and Rob. They're very, very close at the top. I do not know at this moment in time who is winning out of those two, because I tally up my points on a Saturday. So once all the wrestling's done for the week. But yeah, just follow it along there at wfantasyleague.com or through Small Cat Moment to see all the latest standings.
Let's go, Teletonga. Give me some points. You owe me for last year, motherfucker. All right, everybody, that'll do us in for this. So thank you, of course, for listening. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for all your support. And thank you in advance for next week. We will see you probably next time around with the... I'm assuming we're going to do... I don't know. I mean, we're probably going to record on Tuesday, either Evolution or All In predictions. It's, no difference to me which one we do. So one of those two will probably be the next one. Then the Great American Bash predictions, and then whatever one we don't do will be after that. So lots of pay-per-view stuff coming up next week. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, check out smarkoutmoment.com for anything else that happens, and we will see you when we see you. Adios, though. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.